We're joined now by Ian Kilgallon, Business Development and Innovation Manager at Gas Networks Ireland. Ian, thanks very much for coming into us. Ian, so the ultimate aim of the Grays Gas project is to demonstrate that we can supply renewable gas into the national grid to heat our homes and to fuel our vehicles. And in doing so, we're going to decarbonise the economy. But I suppose over the years, there have been lots of such ideologies that have tried and failed. Why are you so confident that this is the way to go?
Yeah, indeed. I suppose there's a lot of advantages. The gas network is an existing infrastructure, so there's no new significant investment needed to support this sector. The gas network is already there. You have very large customers that are already using gas very efficiently. You have a whole heating sector, a whole domestic heating sector, again, that are using gas very efficiently. So in a scenario where we can inject renewable gas into our grid, it's essentially just a fuel swap. So there's a cost involved in producing it, and that cost is higher than the cost of natural gas out of the ground, if you appreciate. But the cost to the consumer, there's no other existing or an additional cost to the consumer. In essence, they're just dealing with a fuel switch. So they wake up the next day, the fuel is now renewable, it's fully decarbonised, and yet they can still achieve all the efficiency savings by running gas combined heat and power in commercial plants and factories, for instance, and obviously gas for heavy goods vehicles. This actually represents a commercial opportunity because this is actually going to be a cheaper fuel than diesel even.
But we're quite late to the game on this, really. You know, there's a lot of our neighbouring member states that have they're kind of light years ahead on the biomethane production side.
Yes.
Why are we kind of late to the game on this? There are only 12 anaerobic digesters in Ireland. Yeah,
at the moment, and I suppose there's an advantage, if anything, by us being late, in that all of our neighbours have learned all the lessons for us. And it's a very mature technology for us to adapt at this stage. Yes, we're late, I suppose, without a doubt, but in adapting now means we're able to learn all of those lessons, not make the same mistakes. And actually, it's quite clear from our colleagues, especially the French at the moment are rolling out these plants, so one every 2 weeks. Doing it at scale has been demonstrated to be the most cost-effective means of doing it. So rather than doing it piecemeal, bespoke projects one after the other, actually having a common design approach and replicate and continue rolling out, you actually achieve an economy of scale much quicker. And actually, it genuinely, in the space of renewable energy at least, it will actually be a very competitive alternative in the renewable energy space.
And Ian, why did you decide on the site in Mitchelstown, down in Cork, which is, big dairy country?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, well, I suppose for one thing, we've a lot of customers in that area. So the agri-food, beverage sectors would be one of our largest client base. They use an awful lot of gas. They themselves have been approaching us to assist in their decarbonisation. So most of their energy, nearly 95% of their energy in most cases is gas. So the option for those guys to be able to switch to a low carbon or a zero carbon alternative is a massive opportunity for them. But equally, they actually need the assistance from the likes of ourselves to help them decarbonise, because their products, every kilogram of milk powder, has to compete on the European market. We're relying on an export market. So driving in decarbonisation solutions and actually decarbonising that gas for those clients will actually allow them to be able to compete at a European level much more effectively with a real decarbonised solution. And obviously the farming sector that are supplying them also has the great challenge to decarbonise as well. So I suppose you've a perfect storm. You have a lot of farmers with a lot of slurry, for argument's sake, in particular slurry, and that's an opportunity in our mind. Yes, the decarbonisation challenge in agriculture is a challenge, but it's also a significant opportunity. And actually doing it in scale in a location like Mitchelstown area is probably an ideal location, to be honest.
Do you think, though, you might face some challenges there in terms of the buy-in from dairy farmers, because there's a huge appetite for it, and I'm sure some dairy farmers would rather see their silage and their slurry and their organic materials going into milk production?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in no circumstances can we actually impinge on the fodder demand and fodder supply. So, and actually the challenges we've had in Mitchelstown have been fascinating. So we've quite a good group of farmers there at the moment. And what we see, the AD facilities need to be located where there is slurry. So slurry is still the primary feedstock. So for instance, we have pig farmers in the Mitchelstown area, so they're an ideal location for an AD facility. Typical dairy farmers, some of them are big enough to have enough slurry themselves, but typically we will need to get a cluster, maybe mini cooperatives together to supply in slurry into the one location. And then in terms of the organic material, so it's a co-digestion process. So it's about 40% slurry, 60% other organic materials, but those organic materials must be sustainably sourced. They can't actually impinge or infringe fodder supply. They must be complementary. So in the Mitchelstown area in particular, where we're seeing that organic material is more likely to come from the tillage sector. So the tillage guys being able to grow, say, a 4-year rotation crop of red clover with rye. That's an ideal feedstock for this. And it also produces a very high quality fodder material, actually, which in the event of scenarios like we've had this year where there are fodder crises, this material can actually be rediverted to supply fodder as well. And now other tillage sources would include sugar beet. We've a fairly large old sugar beet industry there, but it's long gone. But those farmers are still there. There's still the capability of growing sugar beet as well, for instance. So they would be probably the two main feedstocks in that particular part of the country. If we were up in Mayo, for instance, it would be quite a different story in feedstock mix. But the challenge we've had in Mitchelstown was a realistic challenge. And I think we had to learn from that to see how this would work. And we seem to have a very good complementary mix between tillage farmers, pig farmers, dairy farmers, and between them all, actually getting the feedstock together would seem to make sense.
So Ian, the injection facility will be down in Mitchelstown, and then you're hoping some kind of cooperative model where there will be, how many farmers are you hoping for to feed into that?
Yeah, so currently we're working with the Ballyhora Development, which are based in Mitchelstown. So they're a community-based development group. At the moment, we have 14 farmers with the group and a lot more interest to join it at the moment. The intention really is that the Mitchelstown is I suppose, the centre point, because that will be the grid injection facility. We're looking to a 50-kilometre radius around that. So that kind of 50-kilometre radius covers all the way up to Limerick, we'll say, all of East Limerick, all of County Tipperary, all of East Cork. So it's quite a big area. Parts of Waterford even would fit into that catchment area. So within that area, we're looking to develop about 15 to 18 AD facilities over a 3-year period, roughly. And in simple terms, some of those will be standalone farmers that are actually probably big enough, especially if they have a significant enough source of slurry. And what we are saying is that the AD facility needs to get all the slurry it needs within a 3-kilometre radius of it, so you can't really move slurry great distances. The other organic material can travel greater distances, but in essence, 18 facilities within that cluster area over a 3-year period, and we think is quite achievable. And we've, as I say, we've 14 at the moment. We don't have too much further to go, but enough interest to get it to the 15 to 18 that we need.
And Ian, funding was announced last week for the Graze Grass project down in Cork. But in terms of the cost for the farmer for the setting up of anaerobic digesters on farm, there's a huge investment involved. How much can these anaerobic digesters cost, and how can farmers fund that?
Yeah, so what was announced the last couple of days was an investment support for just the infrastructure. So that's us investing close to 29 million on putting in place the central injection facilities and the logistics, gas collection facilities, etc. And separately, actually, we're also supporting CNG vehicles, heavy goods vehicles, to convert over as well. But in terms of the farmer developments themselves, every single AD would need a capital investment of at least 5.5 million each, if you appreciate. So you're looking at, for 15 to 18 AD facilities, you're looking at a fund of the order of 100 million needed to actually fund all of those projects. So we've been quite active in terms of engaging with investment houses across Europe and with our own, I suppose, Department of Finance as well. So the logic we're working to, and we've quite a lot of buy-in really at this stage, and I suppose given the fact that it's such a mature industry in Europe, we've had a great interest from the investment houses across Europe that are very experienced in working with biomethane, in France in particular. So the idea of actually creating an Ireland Inc. Fund, call it an investment fund, based out of this project, in essence, the AD developers, the farming groups, will be able to come to this fund, receive 100% financing out of the fund on a non-recourse basis. And I suppose there's quite a lot of supports we're generating in there as to how that business model can be pulled together to protect the interests of the farmers, farmer groups or the cooperatives, such that they're not at risk, but also that the fund is, I suppose, giving that low interest loan or low interest capital support that is needed, which our own Irish banks aren't capable of doing at the moment.
How much do you need in that fund?
It's a minimum of €100 million, and to be honest, it's a lot easier getting that kind of substantive volume of money out of Europe, because you don't go to the European Investment Bank, for instance, seeking for 50 million, even 100 million. To be honest, is actually a small change for them. So they're really only interested if you can come to them with a large program of the order of £500 million. And to be honest, our strategy, Gas Networks Ireland strategy, we would see this as the first part of the first phase. Our actual overall target is to get to 20% renewable gas by 2030. So you're looking at a $3 billion investment by 2030 of the order to support a nationwide rollout of AD facilities, not just the Mitchelstown project, if you know what I mean. The Mitchelstown project we would see as the first phase in that, but the ambition is to go that large.
So would the farmer supplier then have to sign up to some sort of contract for a number of years? And also, can you give me any sort of idea on the return that the supplier could get for participating in this type of project?
Yeah, so there will be different business models that will suit different farmer enterprises, if you appreciate. So if you take it, first of all, there will be opportunities for, I suppose, feedstock suppliers, for lack of a better way to describe it. So, for instance, tillage farmers would have the opportunity now to grow rotation crops and actually enter into contracts to supply into the AD facility, typically on a fixed price basis, kind of per tonne of dry matter, kind of high quality material. The higher quality, the higher the rate, but on a fixed rate basis, if you know what I mean. So they will be able to enter into contracts which could be 5 years, 10 years, even, well, we'll say 3 to 5 years probably initially to get comfortable with it. Then obviously the AD developers themselves, which could be an individual farmer or a group of farmers coming together, we advise the creation of a special purpose vehicle just to protect the interest of the main farming enterprise, so as not to put any risk on the main road of the farm, if you know what I mean. So a separate site would have to be set up, kind of 2 to 3 acres in size, properly fenced off, a special purpose vehicle, a legal entity created, and that project or that development would be run and operated by the farmer or the farmer group. They would be paid a salary to run it. They would have a dividend interest, or they would have an equity share in the actual project. So they would earn a dividend if it's running efficiently. And obviously the gas produced will earn a guaranteed return. So it'll be a fixed price for the gas being produced and collected by ourselves. And I'm sure I forgot to say, well, yeah, of course you have the biofertilizer as well, which initially we're kind of saying that the biofertilizer being produced, it's a very nutritious fertilizer. We are kind of classifying it as a free material for the moment, because in time we think that actually, we believe it will actually demonstrate to be better than current chemical fertilizers in terms of absorption rates. So kind of it would be in the long term, medium term even, this will actually demonstrate that non-organic chemical fertilizers could actually be significantly displaced by this fertilizer being produced. And as I say, it will be on a free basis that your feedstock supplier would supply to the AD facility on a fixed price basis, get free fertilizer back to help improve the land quality, etc., etc. And in time, we believe the volumes being produced of that biofertilizer probably will yield a future commercial return as well.
Ian, there is a big push as well at government level for electric vehicles at the moment. Do you think a renewable gas, a biogas fueled vehicle is a more realistic option?
No, to be honest, for domestic vehicles, just the sheer energy efficiency, and typically most domestic vehicles are short range distance usage. Electric vehicles are still probably the better choice for that. What we're pointing to biomethane or renewable gas for transport would be for the heavy goods vehicles. So if you appreciate, and especially in the agri sector, you've got all those dairy collection trucks, you've huge amount of logistics transport between food processors, the supermarkets, the export industry, etc., etc. So if you look at the scale of the transport sector, about 3% of the vehicles are made up of heavy goods vehicles, but that 3% actually accounts for 20% of the greenhouse gas emissions from transport. So relatively small quantity in the scheme of things. And to be honest, heavy goods vehicles on electric, it just wouldn't make any sense, whereas actually HGVs are being manufactured today at 400, 450 horsepower, the likes of Iveco and Scania. So just as powerful, if not more powerful than the current HGVs that are being used by all the dairy collection and all the logistics companies. They're the ideal market for biomethane, and that's a completely zero carbon fuel for these guys. And as I say, it can be produced competitively relative to diesel prices as well, which is another added advantage.
Ian, it's a fascinating subject and I have loads more questions, but we're out of time.
No problem.
Thank you very much for coming into us.